Hi, welcome to my channel. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, I moved to Panama in 2019 from the United States. Thought I was going to live in a condo by the beach. Decided actually the mountains, the cooler climate was better for me. So I bought a fixer-upper house and I live in El Valle. It has been very rainy here for the past week. We've had like those huge torrential downpours. It's been pretty amazing. Some thunder and lightning, but man, just the accumulation of water is pretty incredible. I think one day we got about like 4 inches of rain just in that one day. So today I'm going to talk about my 11 top tips for you to have an easier life as an expat in Panama. Number one would be to have some basic Spanish. Just very basic. Just know how to say please and thank you and where's the bathroom? And also in Spanish, know how to say, do you speak English? Don't make the assumption that everybody speaks English. It's better to ask if they do speak English, and if they don't, then you can use a translation app. You can ask for, forgive me, no hablo español, or no entiendo mucho español, and you'll find that most people will be more than patient with you to use an app to help with the communication. Learn how to say good morning, buenos dias, good afternoon, buenas tardes, good evening, buenas noches. You will notice that it's common in Panama for people when they're going into a store, they'll just announce, buenos dias or buenas tardes. I've even had people, strangers, like if I've been eating alone at a little fonda, they'll just say buen provecho. So know those very basics at a minimum. It's also just good for your brain, right? To exercise your brain muscle and get those synapses firing. I've been using Duolingo. It took me a long time to get into a groove, but I've actually been on a 600-day streak. But there were times where I would use it and then not use it for weeks or maybe even months. But the consistency really does pay off. So that's tip number one. Number two would be to learn about Panamanian history and culture. I know that during the times of the road protests, road closures, when there's a protest, I would get incredibly frustrated, and it was so hard for me to understand why those were allowed. But then over time, I came to learn that this is the only way that, groups feel like they get heard and that action is taken. So that makes sense historically. If something is, the only way that you get change and action to happen, you're going to continue to do that. While it's very frustrating and I don't like it, I can at least understand it better. You want to learn about the important holidays and, the history of Panama's separation from Colombia, the history of the canal. There's a lot of important holidays around those events that are celebrated. One thing that you'll learn pretty quickly is that Panamanians really value family time. There's usually large extended families. They really appreciate and enjoy getting together and celebrating anything in life that you can celebrate. I think it's important also to attend cultural activities. Now this can also be a little bit of a challenge. For example, there's a national craft fair that's coming up at the convention center at Lapa, I think it's called, in the city. And you go onto the convention center website and you can't find any information about it. So you can't find out the the hours, the days. You can get information on how to enter it, but I mean enter it like as a vendor, but you can't find information on how to attend as a visitor. So Facebook groups sometimes will have information. You can check outside of like the little markets, the Chino markets. I'm going to say something about that in a minute. Sometimes you'll see some flyers posted. You can ask other expats, although sometimes as expats we're not really in the know of the small parades or the flower festival that happens or the little celebration to celebrate the a harvest of mandarins. We have one of those mandarin festivals here in El Valle. So you'll notice that I said Chino to describe a little corner market. Chino is actually the Spanish word for Chinese. In the United States, it's kind of seen as a derogatory term to maybe describe someone, as Chinese. But here in Panama, it's very common to call those corner stores Chinos. They are typically owned by Chinese families that run these businesses, and that's just what they're called. So there are these cultural differences that you'll find when you adjust to life in Panama. Number 3 is a helper or a fixer. To have one of these is kind of invaluable and a necessity in Panama. There are any number of situations and circumstances where you might need some help from a Panamanian who just knows how the system works and how to get stuff done. So, for example, if you get a speeding ticket and it's in a different province, how do you deal with that? Or like me, my car is registered in Panama City, but I live in El Valle, and I don't want to have to go to the city to get the car registration and license plates every year. Oh, also like for emergencies, it's very helpful. I signed up for the Panama helpline. It's $120 a year. It's for emergencies only. But I figured, if something happened, I'm not going to be able to call the police and speak in Spanish and give them directions, right, to get to my house if something has happened at my house. With the helpline, you call that number, you're registered with them, you provide your registration number, and they have all your information on file, and so they know who to call. Let's say you need an ambulance. Like, I wouldn't know how to call for an ambulance on my own. There's not that many ambulances, I don't think, in Panama. It's not really a common, typical thing. I might not know which hospital is open at what time, or depending on the injury I had, where I would need to go. So I find that to be very valuable. Although I didn't think to call them when I had my car accident, and that probably would have been very beneficial to do that. So I also use, I'm sure you've heard of the name Stephanie Morales. She has a company called Expat Services, and I hire her every year usually to renew my license and registration, just for that simple fact that I don't want to go into Panama City and have to deal with the bureaucracy, waiting in line, maybe not having the right form, or something needs to get stamped or sealed. I'd rather pay her to do that. She's also been very, very helpful in dealing with the company that insured the driver of the truck that hit me. She's handling, getting that claim filed, and hopefully actually within a few days, I might actually see a bank transfer come in for reimbursement. In the Cherokee province, I've heard of the name Rodney Direct as being one of these helper fixer type people. I don't know anything about him, just have, heard his name, and there's a website so you can look up his information. Of course, check with other people, several people. Don't just post on Facebook asking for feedback on a business because of the libel laws here in Panama. If people have had a negative experience with a business, they won't really announce that on Facebook. So, have a private conversation with people and to learn of their experiences with different service providers. Number 4 is products and systems to deal with the humidity. Unless you're living in air conditioning or have, like the dehumidifier function on your air conditioner running all the time, you're gonna need some systems in place to deal with the humidity. Leather and paper, certain wood, it just does not hold up well here. Even if you leave your car for a couple of weeks or months, like in rainy season, you will have mold and mildew on the interior of your car. So if you're gonna be traveling, you can get one of those giant tubs of like damp rid and leave it in the car. Better would be to leave the keys with someone and have them, start the car. Anyway, it's good for the battery health of the car. I use damp rid. I have those tubs that it has the material in it that turns into water. I guess it absorbs the moisture out of the air. I was using the hanging ones in the closets, but they would literally get full of water in like 10 days. So I found these heat tubes and I would put those in the closet for my clothes, and then I keep one in a cabinet. I thought it was going to be good for like keeping spices and certain foods from, getting destroyed from the humidity, even unopened things. I mean, it's amazing how the moisture just gets in everywhere. But the cabinet where I have the heat tube, it didn't really help with the spices, so I'm just gonna have to rethink that plan. I have silica packets that I keep. Sometimes I'll keep like my kitchen towels in a plastic bag, and I put a silica pack inside of that. And I also bought some rechargeable dehumidifier packets on Amazon. You just pop them in the microwave when they turn blue or pink. I can't remember which color it was. Those are helpful. I have a dehumidifier in a closet that's running all the time. So I set the humidity, at a certain percent. And that's where I keep paperwork, books, photos, anything that, and also my clothes actually are in there, most of them. Some of them are in there. That's very helpful to have. There's this really cool thing called a brisker. It was at a house where I was house sitting for some friends. You can use it to keep, chips fresh, cookies, crackers, spices. That actually would be a good thing to use for spices. It's just got the warmth, continual warmth in there that helps get rid of, moisture in the air. Keep fans going. That's really good just to have constant air circulation. Sometimes people will leave cabinets open. When I was, renovating the house, I wanted to have just wire mesh on the kitchen cabinets, because I've seen from, house sitting and renting in different places that if you have, closed wooden cabinets, it's just gonna create moisture and odors. So you just want to keep as much air circulating as possible. You can also just store things in those plastic bags, like the vacuum sealed plastic bags, or even just like a large plastic bag that you just kind of like wrap around a little bit. For the casita, I keep the extra bed sheets that have been laundered in plastic bags, and I keep the towels in a big plastic bin, and so far that seems to be working pretty well. The fifth thing you need, if you have a car, you need a good mechanic. So, and I would actually recommend having maybe a couple different mechanic shops or people that you use for different things. So for example, I will often bring my car to Auto Centro in Coronado. It's a large corporate owned service shop, and they're great for many things. However, when I had some smaller things and just wasn't able to coordinate, with Auto Centro on timing, I found another mechanic, Daniel, who speaks English and is in Gorgona, and I've brought my car to him for several just kind of quick fix things, little switches or things that were just kind of needing a quick little look at. I'll probably bring my car back to him for oil change and see how that goes, and also you want to know where to get tires fixed. There's a lot of shops you'll see on the Interamericana for tires. Llantas, I think is how it's pronounced. Because the roads, they can be really, really rough on your car. In fact, I was driving up the road to El Valle and I hit a pothole so hard it cracked my tire rim. And that was a pain in the butt to find a new rim. So I was driving on the spare rim for probably 2 months because one place on the side of the road sold me the wrong size, and other places just didn't have the size that I needed for the Honda CR-V. They don't sell them new. I looked at places locally. I tried contacting places in the city. I had Mark of Argus looking, at spots where possibly I could find a tire rim. There were just none to be found. Finally, I ended up going back to the guy who sold me the wrong size. He did give me my money back for the wrong size rim, and I did buy the correct size rim. But that took a while. The other thing you'll notice is that mechanic shops don't carry parts. It's not like you just, bring your car in, drop it off, and then come back and pick it up. Unless you're bringing it to the dealer, you're gonna go have to buy the parts and bring them to the mechanic. They'll give you a list of what you need, and they'll direct you on where to go, but there's no guarantee that that shop is gonna actually have the parts that you need. This happened to me for an air conditioning fan. Auto Centro, gave me the name of what I needed. I went to Gorgona, bought the fan, brought it back to Auto Centro, turned out that it was the wrong size, had to go back to Gorgona, so it's time consuming to deal with these things. But it's really important that you have mechanics that you trust. So I feel good about, the 2 people that I have. And then also I've used this mobile mechanic in the past, and he's really great, very knowledgeable. But to use him for things that are more complicated probably wasn't the best choice. I had some issues with the front end suspension on my car, and so he just kept having to come back, and meanwhile, my car was still, making the noise, and it was kind of driving me crazy, and that probably should have been something I brought into Auto Centro and just let them deal with the whole thing. Number 6 has to deal with banking, bills, mail, and phone service. So you can't open a bank account if you're not a resident in Panama. So if you are planning on having residency and getting a bank account, you want to investigate how you're going to transfer money. There are certain banks, I believe Schwab is one of them, that are set up so that there's either minimal or maybe no fees. I don't know because I don't use Schwab, but I see that posted sometimes in different Facebook groups. But you want to research what systems you're going to be using for you. I know that I joined multi-bank first when I moved here, and I could write myself a check and deposit it into the account. It took about 2 weeks, maybe 3, for the check to clear, but there was no fee for that. However, that branch closed, and so then the closest next branch was in like La Chorrera. And one time I had to deal with something with the bank that could have been done online with, you know, a banking system in the US, but I had to go to the physical branch to get this done. So I had to drive, you know, in traffic, go to the bank, handle the thing, and that's when I opened a different account. I have a bank account with Global, and that office is in Coronado next to the Ray supermarket. So for mail, there's a lot of different forwarding services like Fastbox, mailboxes, etc. There's something called Zip Cargo, and Meteor Box, actually. So there's different mail forwarding services, so you can shop on Amazon and get things delivered. I didn't know that for like the first year that I was here, and I didn't really understand how these mail forwarding services worked. Basically, like with Fastbox, where I have a mailbox, you sign up free for an account. I order something on Amazon, I get free shipping usually, and that goes to a Miami address in Florida. And then from there, it's shipped to Panama City, and from there, it comes out to Coronado, and I pay a per pound fee. They also used to have like a volume fee, but I think they've changed their system a little bit. Anyway, you can do some research and find a mail forwarding service that's going to work best for you. Some of them have different rates. Some of them are better for heavier things. There's a company called Delvey that I used to ship a couple of really heavy things, and that gets delivered to the Reba Smith Center in like Costa del Este, I believe. So I had to go down and into the city to pick that up, but it was worth it for what I was saving on shipping of something heavy. For the phone, this can be a little complicated. So I have a Google Voice number, but I learned something the very, very hard way, and also with my bank, that was Wells Fargo in the States. Wells Fargo failed me miserably. They gave me incorrect information when I was in the branch and figuring things out on my move to Panama. One of the things, which I actually didn't ask them because I didn't know that it was an issue, but a lot of banks and credit card companies might not give you codes, security codes over a VoIP, which is a voice over internet provider number, and Google Voice is a VoIP. So Wells Fargo froze my account, and then I had like a nightmare process of trying to contact them, and I'd be in that automated system hell, and then my calls would get disconnected. I mean, I was like tearing out my hair. It was so frustrating. So make sure that your bank and your credit cards and any other services that might send you a security code, if you're going to use a VoIP, that they will be able to send codes to that. I've heard of people using something called Magic Jack. I don't really know what it is, but I think that also is a VoIP. Now the newer iPhones, at least, and probably some Androids, have the dual SIM card, so you could do that, though that's an expense to have, you know, another SIM card. But just be aware that you want to set that up before you leave the US if you're going to use a Google Voice number, because you have to port that number, and it has to be done in the States. To pay your bills, I think it's easiest to obviously use an app or the online function. However, sometimes setting those things up is a really time-consuming process, because they want you to fill out different information fields, and they're asking for information that you might not know how to find on your bill. So for example, like with Naturgy, they have the NIS number, and then there was something like a second NIS number. I didn't know what that was. Anyway, the Naturgy app is pretty much useless. So I then finally was able to figure out how to get to pay my Naturgy bill on my Global Bank app on my phone, but I had to make a trip to the bank to set that up. I don't know why, I can't remember. Some things you just want to block out of your mind because they're complicated and they take up space. But I would recommend that if you're renting, try and keep accounts in the landlord's name. I've had 2 experiences with one rental that, you know, they wanted me to have the electric in my name, and then it took 8 months to get that out of my name and to get my deposit back from Naturgy. So I would just leave it in the landlord's name if possible. You know, they can just tell you how much it is. They can send you a copy of the bill. Same thing with, you know, for cable or internet. I got it in my name, and then when I left, the company, even though I had like an email stating when I needed to stop service, they billed me for additional months, and I would get notices that I was going to a collection agency, even though I kept sending them copies of the email that clearly stated when I discontinued service. I think eventually they just got tired of emailing me because I haven't heard from them in probably a year, but you know, that's a pain. It's easier if it's just kept in the landlord's name rather than you having the headache of dealing with it. Number 7 is patience. You have to have patience when you're moving to another country. Things happen at a different pace here. Things happen differently. There's different systems. Most likely, if you don't have a grasp of Spanish, you're going to feel frustrated. I know that when I have been frustrated and impatient, a lot of that is just my frustration with myself that I'm not understanding what's happening because of my limited Spanish. So, of course, not my best moments, you know, as a grumpy gringa, but I try to prepare as best I can. You know, if I'm going to be dealing with a bank or a government office, make sure I have a good night's sleep, make sure I have food and I have water, and, you know, I'm like the best I can be before dealing with those things. I mean, that will actually really serve you well if you're prepared for those things. It's like, you know, when you would have to go to the DMV in the States, you got to be prepared for that. There are water, power, and internet outages. Some are planned, some aren't. Some are for 5 minutes, some are for 8 hours. You just have to develop the patience to deal with those things. And then in the next section number, I'm going to deal with number 8 is backup plans. Having patience really is pretty critical to have your life be more enjoyable here. In the grocery store, you're not going to find all ingredients every time you go in. Sometimes they're out of things. My local Ray is out of the unsalted butter that I like. Okay, it's not a life-changing scenario. Would I like to have the unsalted butter? Yeah, but they don't have it. So, I have to wait. Same thing with some yogurt. Maybe sometimes they don't have unflavored yogurt, or, they're just out of stuff. And there's other markets that you can check too. Also, if you're running errands and looking for specific things, if I get, one thing done, I celebrate. If I get 2 or 3 things done, that's cause for major celebration. Like if you can, get a car part that you need and, find some obscure item in a store and deal with a bank issue, like that's a trifecta that's amazing. So I find if I lower my expectations a bit and increase my patience, usually that is a good formula for my peace of mind. Service is definitely a lot slower here. Service in restaurants or service providers in stores, although some stores it's actually kind of amazing how attentive the salespeople can be. But you just have to have patience and persistence. Know that sometimes service providers coming to your house, they may not show up within the window of time that they said, or they may not show up at all. So you just have to try again with different people until you find someone who is more reliable. So number 8 is the backup plans. There are a lot of unpredictable things here in Panama, so I like to have backup plans. In fact, I have 2 internet providers. I have Starlink and I have fiber optic through Mobile. And at first, for the first few months when I had both, I thought, well, this is kind of ridiculous. I should just have one. But surprisingly, they each might have down times. If it rains really hard, or if there's something funky with the satellite, or they're doing work on a line for Mobile. So they each have gone out enough that I actually feel okay having both. And between the 2 of them, I pay less than $100 a month. So I figure that's pretty good because I paid more for that in the States just for one provider. So I think that's pretty good. I have an external battery charger for my car. I got this at Casa de Batteries. It's this little solid battery basically that has charging cables on it for my car, and then I can also use it to charge my laptop and my phone. I also have a solar powered phone charger that I keep in my car, and I just ordered like an emergency kit that I keep in my car. It's got, I don't know, like 100 pieces of stuff that are helpful in an emergency. I ordered that after I had my car accident because, I mean, I was probably like this close from going over a cliff and into a deep ravine. So if I'd had to stay in that ravine for a while, maybe I would have needed some of these emergency supplies. I have a cooler that plugs into the car. I got that primarily for when I was house sitting or traveling kind of like in between places. It's a cooler that you can plug in to, a wall outlet, or you can also use it to plug into the car. I don't use it as much, but it's nice to have. And if I, go to the store and I'm getting a lot of cold products at Panama or down at the Rain Coronado, it's nice to have a cooler pack just to keep things fresh and keep them in that pack for the drive back home. So also for food safety, you can freeze some bottles of water, keep them in the freezer, so that when the power goes out, you just pop one in the fridge, and that will help keep the fridge a little bit cooler. Notice how I did not say if the power goes out. It's when the power goes out. It always goes out. Like I said, it's either scheduled or it's not scheduled. It could be for 5 minutes. It could be for 10 hours. Best case scenario would be to have a generator. Best case scenario would be to have an extra water tank outside. You see the water tanks. I don't have either of those at the moment. Also, another good thing to have would be one of those uninterruptible power supplies for electronics, or some type of backup battery, like a Jackery, that you can use for different things in the house, smaller appliances. And also surge protectors you want for every device that is important to you, because it's the surge of the power shifting that can cause damage. So they're like $15 a piece, well worth the investment for the peace of mind. I got them for all the appliances and electronics that I have in the house. So I keep extra bottles of water for cleaning or flushing the toilet. I don't actually have extra drinking water, but that's something I should probably keep on hand. And that's again where having the water tank would be very beneficial for when the water goes out. It does go out quite a bit, I think, in dry season, toward the end of dry season, like in the Coronado area. I'm not familiar with the other provinces and water supply issues, but that's something to check into when you're considering what area of Panama that you want to settle into. I keep an extra Tropigas propane tank, mostly because I have the casita and I just always want to have a tank available if one of those tanks runs out. And there have been times in El Valle where Tropigas tanks, the 5-gallon tanks, were not available. So I do like to keep an extra one on hand. It's just good peace of mind, and I like having it and knowing that it's here. Number 9 would be a supportive expat community. So even a hermit like myself, I find value in connecting with other expats, because when you're in a new country, it's really helpful just to have that network of people who have walked the same path. They know the challenges that can be inherent in being an expat in a foreign country. So supportive is the key word here. And I've noticed that on certain Facebook groups, there can be some keyboard warriors who take pleasure in just being adversarial or snarky and sarcastic and unhelpful. So I would shy away from, just going to those Facebook groups, but they can provide some value. So I ended up just blocking the people that I just found to be kind of annoying. And that changes the whole group dynamic, because I don't see the posts from the people that are just contrarians. So if you've noticed that there's any groups where certain people are just kind of, negative or just unhelpful and critical, just block them. Problem solved. An expat community can be helpful to get referrals for workers, service providers, But just keep in mind that, you know, someone might have had a great experience with a plumber 8 months ago, but a lot could change in that 8 months. And, you know, maybe there's something going on in that person's life, and, you know, they've kind of fallen off the deep end. Maybe they're not as reliable. Maybe they're gonna, you know, walk off with some money, or, you know, you just don't know. So get a few different referrals, or at least a few people who refer the same person. But even so, I've had that happen here in Valle, where a couple people had good things to say about a local guy that I was gonna use to repair my car, and I gave him money and then started like getting a little bit of the runaround from him. And then turns out I heard, you know, some horror stories from other people. So you just have to be cautious with your trust. You know, I mean, it's challenging to make these decisions on who to trust, but, you know, all you can do is the best you can do, right? Just do your due diligence, and don't give someone money to go buy parts or supplies. Do that yourself. So you can find a lot of expat groups on Facebook, and there are different groups that have coverage for all different areas of Panama. I think I've said on a different video, you know, as far as trust, don't just blindly trust an expat because they're from the same country that you're from. Trust is something that's earned and developed over time, not just given out blindly. Sometimes the scammiest people can be expats, unfortunately. Proceed with caution. Number 10 is you need a good attorney. If you have gotten residency, you had to have an immigration attorney, and typically attorneys can handle different aspects of living in Panama for you, or if they can't handle something, they can refer you to an attorney who can handle the situation for you. Again, it's got to be an attorney that you trust, that you have an established relationship with, because just like any other service provider, there are, you know, the good apples and the bad apples. You just have to, you know, have that trust. Again, could be from referrals. It could be in some groups. I know that Jackie Lang has resources that, you know, she trusts those people. And then I Go Panama, they also have like vetted providers. So you can find, you know, some security in those aspects. You might need an attorney for a variety of things. If you have a foundation, or if you have a corporation, if you want to start a business, if you have some kind of, you know, business partnership, if you're going to purchase real estate, you know, you will need to have an attorney for various things. And it's just good to have a relationship with an attorney that you can call or message should you need them. For as much as this is not a litigious society, the following are scenarios that I personally know about and that are surprising. I'm just going to look at my notes. I've heard about people who, they were a great tenant, they didn't, you know, cause any damage, but the landlord doesn't want to return their security deposit. And so you might need an attorney for that. A service provider that was referred to you from, you know, someone that you trust, and then you give them money to go get the supplies or materials, and then they're missing in action. You never hear from them again. And this could be significant amounts of money. Or, you know, maybe someone is doing some work on your property and they cause damage to something that's going to be even more expensive to fix. You're most likely going to need an attorney to handle that. This next case, kind of surprising, but it has happened. An expat that you think you can trust, intentionally injures themselves on your property and then sues you. So that's happened, where they're suing for not only physical ailments, but also mental and emotional distress. There's a case where someone is being sued by a service provider for not paying for something that they didn't agree to pay for. So there's a company that, just filed a claim to get money from people who didn't even agree to buy the contract or service that this company was going to provide. They gave a quote, and then the people were like, I don't know, that just sounds too high or whatever. We're not interested. And then they got taken to court. So the company didn't even provide the service, but sued for the money that they would have gotten for that service. So strange circumstances, and it's good to have an attorney. And last on my list, number 11, common sense and safety precautions. So when I first moved to Panama, I thought that I was going to live in a condo. For safety reasons, I thought that I would feel, just safer in a condominium. And then during the quarantine in the pandemic, I realized how much I value being in a house, having a yard, and somewhere where I could garden. So I ended up, having a house with a yard and somewhere I can garden. That said, I'm always aware of my surroundings wherever I go. I'm aware of where I'm parking. I'm aware of peripherally, people that are around. I don't make eye contact with the people that are in the parking lots who, I guess they want to come up to cars and ask for money. I don't roll down my window. I have some, self-defense things in my car. I have pepper spray and a Kubotan. I actually have been duped twice, once in Valle and once in Coronado. People just, they talked their way into me parting with money. Now each time it was only 20 bucks, but still, the fact that I could be that gullible is kind of shocking. It's probably, just, I don't know, I'm gullible, too trusting of people sometimes. Anyway, 40 bucks in the grand scheme of things is not a lot of money, but don't give money to people. Just don't. No matter what sad story that they give you about what they need the money for, it's most likely a lie. At home, I have security cameras that have video recording, and I can remote view, if I'm not here, so I can look at the property. And it also has a speaker system so that I can talk if somebody's, here at the property. I have a stun baton and pepper spray, and also a can of wasp spray that I leave by the front door, and also some pieces of bamboo that are around 3 feet long. They're very light to handle, but they can cause significant pain, like if you hit somebody on the hand, with that bamboo. You want to get the local number of the police station if you're not going to sign up for a service that calls, for you. Get the local number, make sure you can tell them how to get to your place in Spanish. There are like crime watch groups, like WhatsApp groups. I think I was in one for a while in Coronado, but people could not follow the rules, and they just would use it as like a chat channel. And also I realized I didn't really like getting alerts about, bad stuff that was going on. I figured I'm gonna hear about it, so I don't want to get pinged about it all the time. You'll hear about things like if you know, bad things are going on, and they do happen. I mean, there are home invasion robberies, there's murder, there's sexual violence, there's, you know, mostly petty theft. You don't want to walk on the beach after dark unless you're in maybe a really big group of people or in a remote area where there's no one at the beach, you know, for miles and miles. Things that you would take caution on anywhere where you are. Unless you're in the city, you're probably not wearing like really expensive jewelry or, you know, designer bags. There's really no need for that outside of the city, maybe. You know, best to just kind of keep a modest profile as best you can. Well, my last little piece got cut off. The last thing I'm going to tell you about, very, very important. On any Facebook post that you make, do not, under any circumstances, state, I have $5,000 to $7,000 a month in pensions and investments and additional, you know, savings of $1 million. Will that be enough to live on? And how much will I spend on a house, or if I want to buy a condo or rent something? Because if you do this, you will get inundated with real estate proposals, business proposals, marriage proposals, dating proposals, investment schemes, scammy things. Just don't do it. Keep your financial information to yourself. If you've connected with somebody online in an expat group and feel that you can trust them, again, with caution, go ahead and have that conversation. But don't make that information public. Hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments. I had no idea this video was going to be this long. I hope you're still watching, and thank you. See you next time.